Here we go again. This is the combo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It is Sunday, December 5th, 2021. Those red-hot Maple Leafs subdued just a little bit in St. Paul, Minneapolis, whichever side of the river they play on. 4-3, the Wild stay hot, 6 in a row for the Minnesota club. The Leafs lose for the first time in a long time. A 5-game win streak ended, but that's okay. They got a point, and they dug back after falling behind 3-0 in a game that Mike and I are completely concerned about. Isn't that correct, Mr. A? Go crazy, go nuts, be frantic, show your anxiety over this team, Mike.
Good morning, Norm. I think that the early part of the game was something to be concerned about. The latter part of the game is something that, we've seen over the most of this season where, within a span of, I think it was 6.5 minutes, the Leafs crawled back from 3-0 to tie at 3-3, played a pretty good third period, survived a 5-on-3 penalty late in regulation. I mean, all in all, over the total of the contest, the Leafs played well enough to win. The start was a little bit of a concern, but it was sort of an oddball game where, goals are going off of, Justin Hall's skate and, puck off the post where Campbell doesn't have a chance to make the save. I mean, and the Spezza goal was a little oddball as well, the first Spezza goal. But, they earned a point, and I think that was the focus, the positive aspect that Sheldon Keefe looked at after the game is they could have very easily folded up the tent and saved, their energy for tonight against Winnipeg. Instead, they came back, they tied the game, they earned a point, they almost won it in overtime, and that was their first shootout of the season. And they obviously, I thought, looked a little rusty in the shootout and didn't have the services of one of their best shootout guys in Spezza because he, I guess, took a stinger. His arm was a little withered after the game because of a slash from Jonas Brodin, and he's okay apparently, but that deprived the Leafs of somebody that you normally use in the shootout.
This is the combo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. oakridgeford.com. Looking for a vehicle? Get at me. theleafscombo@gmail.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at I am Norman James. Go ahead and touch base through community on the YouTube platform, youtube.com/theleafsconvo. The Leafs were out physicaled against the Wild. To be expected. The Wild are a bit of a crash and bang team, but they score a ton of goals. I really like the way they play hockey. I also like the way the Leafs do things. When the Leafs don't win, we can look at some of the aspects that may have contributed to that failure. Mm-hmm. We know the Leafs aren't a physically dominant team. They're never going to get in your face, ever. They've been on a run. They seem to have been able to, dictate the play over this last month, going 8-1-1 over the past 10, playing really, really well, doing it their way. But do you feel like at some point the Leafs will have to add another dimension, another aspect, another level to the game beyond just the skill set, just beyond just the ability to bring people out of their seats in order to finally take that step to really be prepared to be successful when the brightest lights shine on this team, and that's when the playoffs begin?
Well, you can see it from what's happened over the last couple of years with Tampa Bay. I mean, somebody was making a comment, well, Tampa Bay was the two-time, COVID Stanley Cup champion. The Stanley Cup championship counts the same damn way, so please shut up. But they lost to Columbus because Columbus played a sort of physical style against them, and they didn't have a response. They went out, they get Bogosian, they get Barclay Goodrow, they get Blake Coleman. They added some role players, and it helped them win. And it helped them win two cups in a row. Mm-hmm. You see these teams, and Minnesota last night showed, they're a very diverse team. They have a strong defense. Their goaltending isn't particularly good, and I think that's going to hold them back because Cam Talbot and Capo Kakkonen are not, to my mind, are not a high level goaltending pairing. But their good defense is good. And their forwards, they have offensive guys like Kaprizov and like Zuccarello who can score, and they also have guys who can play physically. And that line with I think it was Foligno, Greenway, and Joel Eriksson Ek, they for the first half of the game they dominated the Leafs. I mean, Greenway is a beast, and he beats on players, and he knocked Austin Matthews over. And I'll give credit to Wayne Simmons and Michael Bunting for responding against Greenway and Marcus Foligno. And Foligno may get suspended by the league for leaving the ice before the fight with Simmons. And then Foligno later in the game plows over Jack Campbell with nary a response. That's a concern because the teams in the Leafs division that they're likely going to have to face in the first round, Florida specifically, with guys like Sam Bennett, with guys like, Sam Reinhart's not a big player, but, a former Leaf and Mason Marchment, who's a physical guy, Ryan Lomberg. These are guys who can get physical, who do get physical and impose their physicality and their will against the opposition. And you have to have a response. Now, you could say, well, the Leafs did have a response. It's Wayne Simmons. It's Michael Bunting. Michael Bunting's 5'10". Wayne Simmons is a fourth-line guy who last night was pressed into a more of a bigger because of the Marner injury. So I think the Leafs, and Kyle Dubas, I'm sure he knows this, maybe he has to find somebody who can play a little more physically, who can play in a top 9 role. Pierre Engvall, Ilya Mikheyev, they're big guys. They don't play big. And that's what you need. You need somebody who plays big. And they don't have many players who do. And I think you have to have that kind of response during the regular season and in the playoffs.
It'll be interesting to see as the season unfolds further, which one of these two dudes, Engvall or Mikheyev, will emerge to the greater extent, who will not only show that they're developing, but grab a role, take on a role, create their own persona, create their own style of game that will lend to the overall success of the Maple Leafs, because that's essentially what Kyle Dubas is facilitating here. You've got the big four, you've got the young defensemen who've come up through the system, people he's brought on, and acquisitions that were made long ago with the idea that they would be more than just passengers in this endeavor. So, that remains to be seen. Just a couple of stats from last night. The Leafs and Wild, 42 to 40 shots, pretty close on the face-off. The Leafs 2 for 5 on the power play, continuing their professional capability with the man advantage over the last little while. I mean, it's been 30% or something like that, which is good. That's all you need to do. Just score once every 3 and a few times that you're on the power play. Give yourself a chance to win, and the success is evident. Just a couple other things. The Leafs out-hit 15-4. I don't know if the Leafs will ever be a crash and bang hit team. I'm just concerned that at some point when they start gripping their sticks too tight and teams are checking them a little harder and the puck isn't going in the same way it has been over the past 3 weeks to a month, then what are you left with, right? And then when you get into the playoffs, I'm sorry, man, it's not going to be some knock them down 10-8 game. These are going to be tight ones. And even if you go up 3-1 in a series, the complexion of the event can change, and we saw that. Had they just knocked some blocks off again that game 5, the Leafs would have been able to beat the Habs and move on. But all in all, the team's playing really well, and they did it last night without number 16, and that's the other topic that you and I wanted to talk a little bit about. So why don't you just get us up to speed on where Mitch is as of today, what you're hearing from the Leafs or what you're not hearing from the Leafs, and maybe you can just dial it back a little bit as to how this whole thing happened.
Well, let me just touch on 2 things quickly. One, Ilya Mikheyev and Pierre Engvall are effective players, but I think they are what they are. You know, it's like they're in their mid-20s. They're fully formed players. I don't think all of a sudden they're going to become. That's why like Ilya Mikheyev is not going to be a top 6 forward who scores 30 goals. I mean, I think he's got talent. I think he's an effective player. I just don't think that they're going to be anything more than they are right now, which is good, but it's not what they need. The other thing, the power play. The power play didn't skip a beat, and Jason Spezza stepping in for Mitch Marner. I mean, honestly, I'd be prepared to make Jason Spezza a permanent part of that power play and make the second power play a little more effective, because the second power play with Engvall and Bunting and Ritchie, there really isn't much of a weapon there. And maybe you move a Nylander or a Marner down to that line, because they didn't skip a beat. With Spezza now, and Spezza created the tying goal with Matthews.
What is it about Jason Spezza that transforms that unit from one with capability but not putting up to one with capability and producing?
Well, I mean, he's got a much bigger shot than Mitch Marner. Marner is a great playmaker, and maybe they think that dynamic. It didn't seem to hurt yesterday, because Nylander's a good playmaker. Matthews and Tavares are no slouches either, and Spezza provides that second big shot along with Matthews. So you got them on both sides, and this is nothing. I mean, the power play with Marner was going great as well. I just see Spezza doing that well on that first power play, and I know that they want to limit his ice time in terms because he is in his late 30s and he can't play 17, 18 minutes a night. He has to play probably 12 to 13 to be most effective. Going to Marner, there was a collision at practice on Friday between him and Jake Muzzin. They showed the video a couple times, and obviously Marner was not exactly pleased that he collided with Muzzin. He collided with somebody earlier in training camp at practice and ended up playing. I think it was at the beginning of the year. This one, even though Sheldon Keefe said it was going to be a game time decision regarding Marner, even up to the optional morning skate in Minnesota, he didn't play, and now Keefe after the game said that he's not going to play against Winnipeg. So Elliot Friedman said that they're practicing caution because obviously Marner is an important part of this team. So, but there's no indication of what exactly the injury is. I mean, is it a bruise? Is it a sprain? We don't know. So they're not being really specific. And
what do you think, Mike, about this mysterious approach? We'll leave it up to you to figure it out, but we're just not going to tell you.
Well, I think that usually they're very forthcoming when it comes to the injury. I think that
So what does that tell you?
Well, I think that they really don't know. And now, Marner's on the trip with them. They're coming back to Toronto after the game tonight. So I would assume Monday you're probably going to see Marner get an MRI or some sort of examination, closer examination, and they'll have a greater idea of what's going on. I mean, Keefe said he doesn't expect it to be a long-term thing, but he expected it to be a game-time decision, and then he's out the weekend. So I think that right now they don't know what's going on, and it's right for them to practice caution, because don't throw them out there and injure whatever is being injured or whatever is injured even more. But I think it's cause for a little bit of concern, and we'll only find out early next week.
Yeah, we know that Marner was upset because he got caught off guard with his head down, or he had his bell rung when he least expected it, and it was a shock. It's happened to every one of us. I had one guy run a pick on me at work by mistake, and he's huge. He rung my bell, and I was kind of pissed that he was there. It's not his fault. It's not my fault. But I'm not just going to go, oh, that's okay when I'm seeing stars. In this circumstance, Marner, call him a baby, call him a petulant brat or whatever. But I'm sorry if anybody gets their bell rung when they least expect it and in the heat of play. You're going to lash out. Whether it's right or not doesn't really matter, because it's limited. It's just to swear and react to the moment. And I'm sure Jake Muzzin and Mitch Marner have cooled things over. wasn't like there was an issue to begin with, but in the heat of the moment, we move on. It's interesting to see some of the comments in the chat here. People ridiculing Mitch over something like this. Again, it just goes to show that there is there's a perception of the guy, and I don't know if we're still pissed off with him from his lack of production in the playoffs and how shitty he started. But everything, I guess, for the most part, over the last little while, seems to have calmed, and maybe there's a bit of a détente between the Nylander and the Marner factions, and just the general discontentment that surrounds the team. So hopefully, he gets back on the ice, because they need him, and he needs to be playing, because you'll have people complaining about, hey, he's a $11 million a year guy and he's injured. That's not how you should be spending money. But anyhow, the Leafs have been looking really good, and they've been scoring more goals. I mean, that 8-3 game against Colorado, not too long, padding stats, seeing how well these guys can work together in situations where they are controlling the play. So really nice to see. Winnipeg tonight, and I don't want to date this too much. However, out of Minnesota into Winnipeg, they've had some success against them. They played them a gazillion times last season. Without Marner tonight, who's in net? How do you think this team is lined up before puck drop?
Well, Kasha came back yesterday after being out for, I think, 3 games. Morgan Riley had been dealing with, after blocking a shot, I assume either a bruised foot or a bruised ankle or something like that, and they both played yesterday. You could see some players inserted in the lineup that didn't play yesterday, like Liljegren for Dermott or Kyle Clifford. Joey Anderson didn't play a lot last night. So, with back-to-back games, you always want to get the fresh players in there. As for goaltender, Joseph Woll was dealing with some sort of issue during the week. I heard everything from, it was, some sort of minor injury to he was sick, but non-COVID. He made the trip, but Michael Hutchinson did as well. I think there's a chance Hutchinson plays tonight, because Woll is just coming back, and Hutchinson is a veteran guy, so I think there's a possibility that he plays. And I know the Leaf fans don't want to hear that, because Woll's 3-0, but you don't want to throw a kid in there when he's not 100%, and whatever is going on. They were a little bit mysterious there with in terms of being forthcoming with whatever was going on with Woll, except for the fact that he practiced on Friday, and but they did bring 3 goalies, and I think they bring 3 goalies for a reason, because they're not 100% sure he's ready to go. And if that's the case, go with the veteran and see if you can tough out a victory against the Winnipeg team that's sort of been up and down this year. But they blew out, I think it was Jersey, earlier on Friday, so they're coming off a big game, and it should be an interesting contest. But as for we know Marner won't be in the lineup, and it's going to really be up to the core guys to step up in the absence of Marner and get the Leafs a victory.
OG's Converse, do you feel like the Leafs need Mitch Marner to be successful? And when I say successful, go to the playoffs, make a run, and win a cup. Do they need Mitch Marner to do that? And I'm not saying no, because you can trade him and get someone 10 times better, because we think he sucks, but another team thinks he's greater. That's not how it works. Minus Mitch Marner, are the Leafs better or worse? So we'll put up a poll in community. You guys can jump on that. Page views are up for the channel. We appreciate that very much. Our last bit of content, it's the tops on Leaf supremacy versus legitimacy, plus the Olympic question. That's our last bit of content on YouTube before this one. I'll put up the post. We need more hits. We need more hits for it. OG's converts who won Leafs Convo hoodies, you'll be getting them shortly, and I will send you a confirmation of the tracking code that fires it out and keeps some data on its process. And we're going to be looking to create some new Leafs Convo gear, so I'll run it past you weathering community, or I'll do something on Twitter or something like that. And you guys can let me know what you think of the gear that we'll have set up. And then if you guys want to make some purchases, you can. Again, so we're all on the same page. We're making no money off of it. And I know there's a real a lot of converts, or a lot of, not maybe converts, but people who consume content want it free, and you get it free, right? And we're not looking for anything. If I build this stuff and create it and send it to you, we're doing it strictly at cost. And in most cases, I'm spending the money out of my own pocket to have it shipped to you. So we'd like you to think about grabbing some gear from us, just so you can represent us. It's not a money making venture at all. We're way too stupid to go down that road, and obviously don't have the numbers that can support some sort of enterprise. But who knows in the future? We'll see how it plays out. So Mike, one of the things about not having Marner or not having Matthews or having the goaltending situation be a game time decision kind of thing is, if the Leafs are going to be successful and considered an elite team, like a legitimately elite team that is consistent and that you are fearful of playing and that you are expecting to succeed, it can't be dependent on anybody, really. Like, if Matthews is out, the Leafs need to press on, and the expectation is that they're still going to be able to win. He cannot be the linchpin in it. And I know that McDavid is, but with Tampa, they could lose guys and go on, right?
Well, they are. They have. I mean, they've lost Kucherov. They've lost Braden Point. They've been out for weeks, and they're still winning. It's
my point. So if Hutchinson has to mind the net for 60 minutes plus, it's so be it, man. There should be no they shouldn't dumb down the potential of the opportunity because, well, we don't have Jack Campbell. Well, so what? You may not have Jack Campbell when push comes to shove and the shit hits the fan. Don't you think the rest of the group is good enough to do what it needs to do? If this group is dependent on everybody being healthy, right, and everybody playing at peak and everybody doing everything at the same time in sync, then I don't think it's going to win.
Well, there is a reason why depth is important when it comes to, especially the playoffs, because players are going to get hurt. We know that. Last year, obviously, a player like Tavares going down early in the first period of game one was, in the end, fatal because it enabled Montreal to be able to shut down Matthews and Marner with the Danault line. But you have to anticipate things like that happening and be able to recover from that and be able to fight through that. Teams have won without their best players, being available. I remember Buffalo getting to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final about 15 years ago, and half their defense was Rochester Amherst guys. So, if you remember the Carolina Edmonton Stanley Cup Final that year when you had, Martin Gerber and a rookie and Cam Ward in goal for one team. For the other team, it ended up being UC Markkanen, who was their third string goaltender. Philadelphia and Chicago, you had Michael Leighton in there after other goaltenders have gone down. You have to be able to be deep enough and talented enough to be able to fight through. So
what was that Tom Petty?
That was my phone ringer. Yeah.
What is that, Tom Petty?
No, it was Genesis.
Okay. It wasn't God Bless America?
No, it was old Genesis, not new Genesis.
Hey, but the thing about the playoffs, Mike, is it's a war of attrition. Like, you might be down to the custodian and the hot dog vendor by the time, game 21 rolls around, right? Because it's who's left to play. Everybody's injured in the season that we're in right now. If it is Michael Hutchinson because Walls whatever and Campbell needs a mental break or something, you got to keep pressing on. If you look back between the pipes and you're dreading who's there, and I know we'd like to have better, but you got enough guys who should be able to carry the day. And if you fancy yourself a contender, you just have to press on. I'm just saying, let's not make too big a deal out of it. And maybe we are guilty of having done that in the past.
No, I agree. I mean, if this team, this is a good test for this team. They were without Matthews early in the season, and then Matthews really wasn't 100% early on, and we saw how they played. Now, Matthews is a different kettle of fish than, you know, another player being. They've been without Ilya Mikheyev all year. I mean, I don't think they've really been fazed by the loss of Ilya Mikheyev. Not to say that he's not valuable and they wouldn't be better with him, but it's different when it's Matthews, when it's Marner, when it's Tavares. These are key players, but they have enough talent that to win games on an ongoing basis. Minnesota is a really good team, so I don't think Marner not being there was a reflection of why the Leafs lost. I think the Leafs lost because for the first part of the game they were out physicaled, and for the last part of the game they couldn't get a goal on a power play in overtime and then lost a shootout. It's not a disgrace. They got a point. Now they have to, you know, get points in Winnipeg against a tough Jets team.
Yeah, and look at when you've won 5 in a row, to win 6 in a row, the odds are not in your favor. To win like winning 5 in a row is difficult, but the winning 6, winning a 7, the odds continue to decrease. But when you're doing really well, you're able to kind of subvert those odds. And in this circumstance, time just ran out on that win streak, but they did get the point, and it's on to Winnipeg. Did you want to add a couple of things on the Olympic situation before we go?
Well, I just think that as we get closer, and I've been saying that I was really questioning whether the NHL should go to the Olympics since probably the summer. Mm-hmm. But now I'm really getting the feeling that they're not, because the fact that a player, if they test positive for COVID, and the rates of COVID with this new variant coming around have been going up a lot, they would have to sequester and quarantine in China for 3 weeks. And, you know, I'm sorry, there was an incident a couple months ago, apparently, with a member of the Polish Olympic squad that they were going to sequester him in China for 3 weeks, and the Polish government put him on a cargo plane instead because he couldn't fly on a commercial flight. And I'm like, okay, you're talking about, if you're the NHL, you're talking about, if God forbid, if Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews catch COVID over in China. So, okay, and it's like in the last few days of the Olympics, they could be gone for most of March because they're quarantining there. This is not something that's going to fly, and I think
come home.
And players are worried about this. So, you know, if it gets worse, which it very well could in terms of COVID transmissibility over the next few weeks, January 10th is the day that it's the drop dead date. If I had to bet, I'm betting they don't go. I know a lot of people out there want to see best on best, and so do I, but not in this situation. Wait to the World Cup of Hockey or something like that. You know, we've seen it before. We'll see it again. You know, Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid are very young, so they'll get a chance to play in the Olympics. But right now, with everything that's going on in the world, I just don't think it's worth the risk.
I agree. But we still see ads for the Olympics. We still see companies ginning up hype in order to push product, using the Olympics as the catalyst or the event that they're excited to be a part of, with the expectation that's coming. And I don't blame them. They've spent so much money. They want to get as many eyeballs on their product or their ads as possible leading up to that moment of doom, or, you know, the decision to push forward. Again, anybody who cares about my opinions, they know I could care less about the Olympics. And traditionally, I've always been ticked off by the break that I had to endure when it came to wanting to see the Maple Leafs continue on either their lackluster play or, you know, their ascent at the time. And again, the thing with the Olympics too, Mike, is before all the preamble and the hype, I don't really get into it. Then the opening ceremonies happen, and, you know, I'll flip on the TV and go, oh, it's already started. And this is after television, obviously. When you're in TV, you're getting excited for the local athletes and everything. But then, you know, the first medal happens, and then somebody's shooting a thing, and they're skiing and jumping and winning medals. And Then I start following it, and then there's one hockey game, two hockey games. There's nothing to do. Canada's playing. I'm into it in the moment, right? But
Right.
as of now, if they were to say it's not happening, I wouldn't blink an eye, wouldn't lose any sleep. It would be fine with me. Last word to you, Michael.
Yeah, if and we're not talking about an overall boycott, it's the NHL. So there will be Olympic hockey. It'll probably be along the lines of 2018, where essentially the Spengler Cup team plays for Canada in the Olympics, and probably a lot of KHLers play for Russia, and a lot of college guys play for Team USA. So, I mean, there will be hockey. It's just, I don't think it's worth the NHL doesn't want to go, but they promised the players that they would go because the players wanted to go. Now there's talk about players starting to have questions. And if the players start to say this is not something that's worth the risk, then they shouldn't go. So we'll see.
I just don't know if I don't like the environment, the environment of the political context.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and whether people think it's over or not, I'm not going to get into the philosophical mind here, and I'm obviously politically charged, depending on who you talk to. But why why do we, like, right now? There's so many things have been canceled, destroyed, ended because of this pandemic. Is the Olympics bigger than that? Is the Olympics more important than everything else that it has to take place? So right now, it just doesn't seem like the right time to do something like this. However, when this much money has been spent and the infrastructure has been created to support this, and China being China, doing what it wants when it wants in many the situation, then maybe any other country, it would have been, this event would have been canceled. In China, it presses on. OG's Converse, thanks so much for your time this morning. Don't forget to like this post, subscribe to the channel, let your friends know what we are doing. We appreciate the support. The numbers are up. Do have a couple of bits of content, some recent shows that we'd like you to view and maybe go double back and get caught up on everything we've done. But in the meantime, we get excited for the next game that the Leafs are involved in Winnipeg, and then the many more to come between now and whether there's an Olympic break or not. So for Mike, I'm Norm. Have a great Sunday. We'll talk to you soon.